and I will add Gary as my co-host. Perfect. You are on.
Okay, there we go. So we'll make a start. It's great to see so many familiar faces. So we're going to talk to Fiona. I'm going to introduce Fiona in a second. Before we do that, every time we've done one of these interviews, we've showed a bit of video. So although Fiona is a really good athlete, I'm not going to show some video of Fiona. I'm going to show some video which I think most people might recognize. We're gonna see some video of Stacey Porter. So this is from a game in 2014. It's the top of the 7th innings. So Queensland are winning 2-1. It's obviously a very low scoring game because there's only 3 runs in the whole game. It's a very close game. So a couple of questions to think about while you watch this. How confident does Stacey Porter look is the first question. How well does she perform under pressure? And then I want you to listen carefully to what she says to the interviewer that she needs to do next. So those 3 questions. How confident does she look? How well does she perform? And then what does she say to the interviewer next?
Bring Stacey Porter to the plate.
How are they going to deal with Stacey Porter? Because she is an absolute superstar.
Interesting that Coach Fabian Barlow to intentionally walk Stacey. Stacey has struggled with Josh McCallum in the past, so good to see he's backing his pitcher.
And there's the ball. Shake of the head, yep.
She looks in the zone, Stacey.
Well, we know her credentials. She's a superstar of the game, captain of the Aussie Spirit, and it's all on her shoulders right now as the Fire Stars look to keep themselves. Look at that! It's away!
What?
No more Coles ads.
Why is that?
Have a look at that. Stacey Porter points to the crowd, and the fans have gone crazy. The whole team's come out, and they're due to take the lead for the first time in the game. Unbelievable. Stacey Porter.
That is an outstanding piece of hitting, and shouldn't really be any surprise. She is one of the greatest players that has ever played the game. You know, players dream about being in a situation like that, and really do get the chance to deliver on it as Stacey.
Now that he's been acquitted,
Jade Wall, no chance. What a turn of events in this game. Amazing stuff. Let's go straight down to Drury Forbes with the chant.
Stacey Porter, top of the 7th. New South Wales in the lead of the grand final. Wow.
I'm still excited. I can't believe that just happened, but it's only the top of the 7th. There's still the bottom of the 7th. Kind of need to stay composed and get through 3 more outs. We know how tough they are, and they're not going to just stay focused on the defensive inning now, I think.
So, okay, so we saw Stacey Porter there. Obviously, she was looking very confident. She did perform under pressure. And then she didn't lose her focus in terms of she knew what the next step was. She was talking about the defence. So let's move on to talk to Fiona. So, if you're not talking, can you switch the microphone off? That's fine. Yep. So in bit of an introduction, we've interviewed 3 people before, 3 elite players. So Sasha, Narissa and Talia. They told us how important it is to work on the mental skills, and these can improve your batting, your fielding, or your pitching. What do we mean by that, and how do you develop mental skills? So tonight we're going to interview sports psychologist Fiona McCarthy. Now, Fiona's a member of the Australian Psychological Society. She's worked with the Hunter Academy of Sport. She's worked with the New South Wales Institute of Sport. So I'll start now and say, Fiona, welcome, and thank you very much for coming along.
thanks, Gary, and thanks for the opportunity to talk tonight.
No worries. And so how long have you been a sports psychologist for, and what attracted you to sports psychology?
I've been a sports psychologist for close to 25 years now, and I guess what attracted me the most was my own experience as a track and field athlete, and just realizing when I competed the importance of the mind and how much it played a part in achieving my goals.
Okay, that's good. All right, so let's get into it and ask some questions in terms of which sports have you worked with and what level have you worked with?
Oh, look, Gary, I've worked with just about every sport, but I've worked a lot with softballers and netballers, hockey, gymnastics, tennis, soccer, track and field, cycling, just about every sport possible, and right from recreational level athletes to international level athletes, be it Paralympians, world champions, Paralympians. So I've been very fortunate in my career to work with some amazing people.
Okay. And who do you enjoy working with? What kind of people?
Look, I enjoy all levels of ability. Obviously, the local, state, and national teams. I like working with teams. I like working with individual athletes, coaches, and parents. That they're it's interesting to work with a cross section of people.
It's interesting you work with parents as well. So obviously working with the Hunter Academy of Sport and New South Wales Institute of Sport, that brings all the elite teams, but working with parents must be an interesting change.
Yeah, it's actually something that I'm very passionate about. I am a parent myself, and I just feel that parents do a fantastic job, and they're probably not given as much information as I think that we can give them, and I'm really passionate about working with parents.
Okay. All right. So the interesting question, what are the most common challenges you've seen? And then we'll talk about each of them in detail.
Yeah, well, there's probably, if I look across all sports, all levels, the ability to handle pressure, preparing for a performance, improving aspects of concentration and confidence would probably be the key areas I work the most with.
Okay. So the ones that kind of jump out really are those improving handling pressure, preparing for high performance, improving concentration, and increasing confidence. So let's jump into that and have a look at improving handling pressure. So for the softballers on the call, so let's just think about some situations where we do have to handle pressure. One is you're batting, you've got 2 strikes on you, how do you feel then? Some people are obviously confident, not confident at that stage. Or you're batting, there's 2 out and the winning runner's on third, and then the coach gives you a squeeze bunt signal. So you've got to bunt the ball and the runner's going to run from third and either score and win the game or get out completely. So you're feeling the pressure, you've got to deliver. Or the opposite case is you're fielding the infield, or you're pitching, or you're playing outfield. The opposition's got 2 out and they've got a winner and runner on third. And then you've got to make sure you field the ball to stop them winning or make a mistake and they win. So can you give us some examples, Fiona, about how you might improve handling pressure or where you're under pressure?
Well, the ironic thing about pressure, Gary, is in order to handle it, you've got to not assume that it is pressure. Okay. So in saying that, if you watched some recent, you've given some great examples there, but, some recent examples with the tennis and the young Emma Raducanu, just treated each point by point, and you can't mentally, you can't get too ahead of yourself. We all know in each of those scenarios you've given, we all know the desired outcome, but we have to focus on what some people may understand as the process rather than the outcome, or the steps, if you like, the sequence of events or sequence of steps that you have to put in place in order to achieve that outcome. So in terms of handling pressure, we can't get too ahead of ourselves. We can't become mathematicians and work out, if this scenario works, then that will mean this will be the result, and etc. So being in the moment and treating that particular situation, any of the ones you've mentioned, or any other situation that may arise, you've got to see it as simply just another bat, another pitch, another situation in your sport. And so a lot of people, or some people, may or may not have heard of mindfulness, which is basically being in the moment. And it's our heads that get ahead of ourselves. It's our brain that's that's causing our body to become tense and maybe not swing as well as we'd like to, or pitch as strongly as we like to, or get the shaky legs when you're fielding. It's our brain that's telling us that this is an alert situation, and it's up to us to recognize that when that starts to happen to us, we've got to start to put some things in place, be that breathing techniques, having this awareness of your own self-talk, because the equipment has no brain. It's the person, and you know, when we can't handle pressure, we don't technically perform as well as we'd like to because of this obstruction of tight muscles, because the brain's kind of telling us we need to be on high alert. So really, we've got to make sure that we don't see the pressure situation as a pressure situation. We just handle it as we normally would, and as maybe you've done hundreds of times at training.
So it's interesting you mentioned training. So normally training's all the physical skills. So, you know, we're all really familiar with that. What sort of training do you need to do for mental skills? Is that a different training session again?
Well, it's great that you said mental skills, because the mental side of sport, in order to improve your ability to handle pressure, improve your confidence, improve your concentration, has all got to do with learning a skill. It's not a matter of just, you know, telling yourself something. It's a skill, and a skill requires regular practice. And if I just skip back a little bit, Gary, to the example with Stacey Porter, you know, I heard the commentators say things like they're in the zone, or they've got to get in the zone. When you know, they celebrated, which was great. So it's great to express that. But then very quickly, everyone involved had to redirect their focus to the here and now. So that's a skill, to be able to redirect your focus back to the present moment. And, you know, a simple way to do that is, firstly, you have to have awareness of, hang on a sec, I'm rushing ahead of myself. So I often say to athletes that if your legs aren't working how they'd like to, or your hands are a bit shaky, or you're just not feeling strong with your swing, then it's probably your brain's a little bit confused. So we've got to kind of quieten the brain down a little bit to send a message to our body to calm our body. So that first step is awareness. And then we can literally say to ourselves, stop. You know, it's a bit like stop. We're rushing, we're overthinking, we're cramming the brain with too much information, we're getting ahead of ourselves. So when you realize that's happening, it's just a matter of being able to say stop to yourself. You may take a couple of deep breaths to calm clear your mind and calm your body. And then sometimes a way to redirect your focus is to what we kind of call ground ourselves. And it just may be, if you're batting, it may just be, you know, just connect with the bat, tighten the grip on your bat, touch your bat. It could be touching your glove. It could be just scuffing the ground a little bit. If you're a fielder, just, you know, making sure your foot's grounded on the ground. So it's just reconnecting with where we are in the here and now. So whether that's batting, whether it's fielding, whatever the case may be. So have the awareness of when it's happening, say stop to yourself, take a deep breath, and then ground yourself to the here and now where you actually are, by using, you know, your equipment as a bit of a trigger. And it just kind of brings the mind back. It narrows the focus, so the mind's not going to wander as much. It narrows the focus to the here and now. So touching that equipment brings you back to your job, which is either batting, fielding, or pitching.
So I know some coaches use kind of devices where they say to the players, look at this particular part of the bat, and then remember that you need to focus, and this is the time you're going to hit the ball, or the same with the glove. They've got a particular part of the glove. So I understand what you're saying there, but is that a separate session? Do we need to run separate sessions for the players, or can we find ways of incorporating some of these mental drills in our normal regular training sessions?
My philosophy, Gary, is if you're using your body, you need to use your brain. You need to use your head. So I'm a big believer that a lot of this ability to handle pressure and confidence comes from how we train. So the answer to that is that these things need to happen. These skills need to be developed. They need to be installed at training sessions. Now, there would be several opportunities at training sessions where that can happen, and you can also create the opportunity. So to have some what if scenarios, you know, which we may talk about a little bit later.
All right, that's okay. Let's actually just thinking about that, one of the what ifs you did talk to me about was about the cyclist. That was an interesting one. Do you want to just talk about that briefly?
Yeah, so I was working with a cyclist who wasn't overly confident and didn't handle pressure situations very well in a race, and started to get quite anxious about not being able to handle the pressure situation. And for him, the pressure situation was how would he recover if he had a flat tire? And, you know, obviously, you know, some of these guys are racing 200 or 300 kilometers. So, you know, he would have to change his tire if he had a flat tire. So I spoke to his coach, and him and his coach were going for a ride on the weekend. And I said to his coach, you know, they're going for a couple of hours ride. So I said, you know, I forget exactly, maybe an hour and a half into the ride, tell your athlete to pull over and change his tire. And he said, how do you know it's going to be flat? And I said, it won't be, but it'll catch him by surprise, and he just has to learn to adapt and not complain and just deal with the situation and just change the tire as quickly and effectively as he would do under normal conditions.
Yeah, so we can find opportunities of doing that in the normal training. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, let's look at the second area. So preparing for high performance. So can you give me some examples and talk about some techniques you might use to prepare for high performance?
Well, a lot of the athletes that I work with actually believe that and these are the highest of high performers, that the performance stage is the easy part, you know, because they just are given the opportunity to execute what they've trained many hours for. It's a bit like the actor or actress going on stage. They spend a whole lot of time working on learning their lines and you know, what they need to do in order to make sure the performance is fine. And then as soon as they appear out of those curtains and the spotlight's on them on the stage, they just are given the opportunity to offload, if you like, execute everything they've learned. So in saying that, I'm a strong believer that, as I mentioned before, that, you know, preparing for high performance comes down to how well you train, and, you know, making sure that you treat training with the same intensity that you would in a competitive situation. And a couple of things I just want to mention here is, you know, there's two types of mindsets you can have. And I've worked with athletes with both these types of mindset. One is a fixed mindset, and the other is a growth mindset. And the fixed mindset is the athlete or the player who just believes that what the skills they've got now is as good as it's going to get. If they're not really fast, then they don't believe they can really get faster. If they're super fast, they don't believe they can get faster either. They just feel that everything is fixed. From experience, their ability to reach their potential isn't very high, and they tend to, you know, not stay in the sport as long as they possibly could have if they'd had a different mindset, because they get a little bit disillusioned with disappointment. They don't seem to be able to handle disappointment. And, you know, lose a little bit of motivation. On the other hand, athletes who have a growth mindset, who just believe, who are like sponges. They just want to know more about everything. Even the things they're really good at, they want to get better at. And the things that they're not so good at, they want to try and improve. And that's a real quality, because the athletes that want to address with passion and determination areas of their game that they aren't very good at is a really positive sign that you've got a player here that really wants to reach their potential. And they're very keen to have the courage to fail in doing that and maybe feel a little bit uncomfortable in doing that in the process, but they're just willing to learn from whoever and try new things. And therefore, that's fantastic preparation for when they're about to perform.
So you said a couple of things there that are quite interesting. So first of all, it's easy for a coach to say, look, to the players, I want you to work on the weaknesses. But as you said there, it does take courage for them, because often if they're playing, well, whatever team they're playing in, if the coach says, I want you to work on the weaknesses, they are going to fail and they are going to feel uncomfortable. So that's a key thing to get used to from what you're saying.
Yeah, I remember reading some, watching an interview, I think it was on Ash Barty. Now she left her sport because she didn't have the motivation. She was a bit stale. She needed better balance in her life. And she used her time away from the sport to really reassess things. And she noted that one of her biggest reasons she believed is she's successful when she came back was she was willing to accept making errors and willing to be vulnerable and not afraid to make errors, because she saw errors. And when I work with athletes, I teach them that errors are your friend. You need to have errors. You need to make mistakes, because that's a way in which you can learn. So rather than seeing your mistakes as mistakes, see them as lessons. What can I learn from this? How can I improve? How can I add this to, my skill set that I already have? And therefore, when you go into performances, they're going in more with a performance mindset of just doing the best they can do on the day. They're still determined, they're still passionate, but doing the best they can do on the day rather than trying to be perfect. And your sport, and it's a great thing, your sport is conducive to errors. Errors need to happen in order really for the game to operate. So as players need to embrace this notion that you don't have to be perfect. Don't seek perfection. Don't seek perfection at training. Don't seek perfection at performance. And that's not saying don't try to be the best you can be, but just be willing to accept that some errors are going to happen. And rather than get cranky with yourself or become a little bit upset about it, try to see those errors as ways in which you can grow.
That's interesting. So there's two things there that jump out there for me. One is you need to push yourself hard at training to put yourself under pressure to make mistakes is number one. And number two, I agree with you about perfection. I know I can think of one very, very good player who came to bat in training, and the first 6 balls, she didn't hit them perfectly. So she's getting really cranky with herself. And I'm saying to her, why are you getting cranky? She goes, I should be able to hit the ball perfectly from the first ball, So that was a very high standard she set herself. And because she was looking for perfection, she was getting cranky and getting less out of the session until she relaxed a bit more.
Yeah, and motivation will improve by making errors and learning from them. Motivation will decrease by making errors and beating yourself up about them.
Yeah.
So you really have a choice. And if you really want to prepare for high performance, you have to be willing to accept that errors will be part of your game, errors will be part of your training sessions, but see them as lessons. Why did that happen? You have to learn, not just, that didn't work. Why? Learn from it. And this is where the growth mindset comes in. Why did that happen? What can I need? What do I need to improve on that? Because training smart is important. It's where you install the program. It's where you learn everything. It's teaching the brain how to operate and how to prepare in order to compete. Now, lots of people go to training. Another aspect of preparing for high performance, they go to train and they train really hard, and then they come to compete and it's not how they'd like. They don't get the results they want. And so I often ask players that I work with, are you training to train or are you training to compete? So the advice for the people listening and watching tonight is work out, what does your competition entail? What does a game of softball entail in a competitive situation? And does your training marry up to that? You know, and I often work with some golfers or tennis players, and golfers in particular, you know, they may go and get 100 balls to hit off the tee, and without a routine, they just go and hit 100 balls. And I often ask them, how many times do you have to do that when you're playing in a golfing tournament where you just stand at the tee and hit 100 balls without a routine? And they said, never. And I said, you're better off hitting 1 or 2 balls with a routine and leaving the other 98 and don't worry about them, because the program you're installing in your mind is different to what you want to execute when you perform. So if we think of it like we think of training like installing a program, like we would on a computer or downloading an app. Once that's downloaded or once that's installed, it's got all the information we need. And then when we get to when we want to run that program or use that app, we just click on it and it runs. Training is no different. Training is where the mind, the body, emotions, all aspects of the game are installed. And then when you come to compete, you just click the program and everything runs. So you don't notice pressure, you're performing at a high level, you're enjoying it, you're accepting of mistakes. Why? Because you've done that at training.
Okay, so that's interesting. Okay, that's really interesting. So it makes us think a bit more about what we need to be doing at training. So often players turn up for training and they kind of go, oh, well, I've been here, done this before. And like they're physically here, they're doing the exercise, they're doing the drills, but you know, listening to what you're saying they should be mentally preparing for the game and trying to rehearse their routines or techniques.
Yeah, and look, you know, training shouldn't be all just tunnel vision, intense type of situations. In training, just like a game, you have pockets of time where you can have maybe a softer focus or a bit of downtime. So, you know, drink break, go and talk to some, you know, find out the latest gossip about what's been happening, talk to your friends, share some stories. But then when you come back to do a particular drill or skill, it's lights on, switch on. So some people have little triggers. You know, we can often have, you know, if we were to turn on our TV, for example, we'd have to get the remote, press the power button, and then we'd touch the channel that we want, the specific channel. We don't just turn the TV on, whatever comes on is what we're watching. Sport is no different, but we don't have a remote control, so we've got to make one up. So, you know, sometimes a trigger is, you know, to switch on. You know, it may be, again, it could just be some people click their hands, some people just tap their thigh, some people have a visual on their glove or their bat, whether it's a smiley face, a dot, you know, some keywords. And that's, you know, you often see the players. I watched, you know, some of the football codes over the weekend, and you often see players with tape on their hands, and they're just some words that they can switch on. So once you've come from your drink break, you come back and, you know, you may just tap your leg and go, okay, lights on, let's go, and learn how to focus for that task for however long it goes for. And then you have another break, you switch off it, or you don't totally switch off. I like to use the analogy like you dim the light. You know, the light becomes bright when you have to focus, and you just dim it a bit when you just go and have a little break and have a chat, and that's fine. You can't have hard focus. You need to have those laughs, those giggles, those jokes with your friends at training, because you have them in games as well.
So you can't have focus all the time, is what you're saying. Okay. Yeah. No. I like the TV idea. That's really interesting. All right, let's move on and see the next topic. All right. Okay, we're talking about improving concentration. We've got Alyssa Mile there and Jess Roddy. So softball it's like the bottom of the fifth innings. You're playing infield or playing outfield behind a fast pitcher who struck out every batter. You've never touched the ball. You know, it's been going for maybe an hour. You know, and the play's going on. It's very easy to lose focus and not concentrate. So yeah, can we talk about that, Fiona? Can we talk about how we can improve our concentration?
Yeah, well, it just extends a little bit on what we just spoke about then. And, sometimes it's there's a lot of action, and sometimes there's no action, and at times it is hard to stay focused with both those scenarios. But I guess if we have some triggers where maybe, and this comes back into having some routines. So, having some key points of, when you see the pitcher doing something as a fielder, you may get in your kind of ready set position. As a batter, there could be triggers that you use of other players' actions that prompt you to switch on your own action, depending on what's happening in the game. It's really important that, you learn how to redirect your focus. So you have this soft and hard type of focus, and just the ability to be able to make sure that you're focusing on the here and now. So it reinforces what we spoke about earlier on about being in the moment. Yep. And so sometimes it's grounding yourself. So sometimes your own switch on may be to see something on your glove. It may be to touch your glove. It may be to squeeze your bat harder. It may be to look at, some aspect of the ball. If you're pitching, it may be to just, if you're fielding, it could just be something that you see your foot touch the ground. And I often remember doing work like that with some softballers, but also, figure skaters that I've worked with. As soon as we kind of had their switch on focus, as soon as, their blade hit the ice, that was the switch on, and it happened at every time at training. Other sports, as soon as they run onto the field, onto the pitch, whatever the sport may be, they actually just have this connection with when their equipment or their foot or whatever hits the playing surface. That was a time to switch on. Other people, may use, tied in their ponytail. You often see swimmers adjusting their goggles. Yeah. That's kind of like their switch on. Some people may adjust their hat, may, tuck their shirt in, tuck their shirt out, look at their shoes, touch their shoes, touch their leg. It doesn't really matter what it is, as long as it's the same all the time. So
yeah, I was thinking that, because you're giving lots of examples, but I can't say, oh, my routine is I touch my ear this time, I touch my nose, I hit my glove, I do something. It's got to be a consistent pattern. So if somebody was just watching you from the sideline, you would be doing the same thing every single time. Every
single time. And you would do it every single time at training.
Yeah.
Because the mind, we're creatures of habit, and we learn from repetition. So we need to make sure that what we're doing is the same every time. And if I can use maybe a silly example, but one that we can all relate to, where, when we first learned to tie our shoelaces, we did it a particular way. We may have tried a few different ways, but then when we got it, we got it. And that's how we tie our shoelaces. And we don't, every time we tie them now, we don't do it a different way every time. And now we've become so good at it, not because we're world champion shoelace ties, but because we've done it thousands of times.
Yeah.
And this mind-body connection, our brain is like a switchboard or wires. This highway, this road we take of redirecting our focus or improving our concentration is the same whether we're in a really intense pressure situation, a really bored situation, or just at training.
Yeah.
It's the same all the time, because the mind knows no different. It's just the part of the program that you've labeled.
Yeah.
Switch on, redirect your focus, switch on.
It's interesting, when we talked to Narissa McDowell, who's an outfielder, she talked a little bit about it, and she said for her, when the ball goes back to the pitcher, that's her trigger. So then she goes into her own routine. I think she talked about punching a glove a couple of times, calling them number of outs, and then getting herself in a physical position. Then in terms of focus, she talked about focusing really closely on the batter and the hitting zone for the batter. So she was really clear that she did the same thing every time.
And a simple 3-step process is similar to, where you may just, again, as you say, touch your glove, you may say something to yourself, and then you may narrow your concentration, because or you may broaden it. It depends on what you're doing, but most of the time, we have to narrow it. And if you were to just, sit at wherever you are now and pick something in front of you and just focus on that, you start to forget or not see what else is around you. So learning how to narrow your focus for the task at hand is super important. So it could just be touching your glove, saying some keywords, and then zooming in on whatever is required, whether that's a batter, whether it's a particular spot, whether it's the ball, whatever the case may be. And it's really important that you keep it simple. You don't want to do you don't want to have many more than 3 steps.
Right. Okay. I mean, in batting, sometimes coaches talk about having a soft focus, looking around the field, seeing where the players are, and then having a very hard focus on the hip or the hand of the person, the pitcher, so they can watch the ball coming in. So
yeah. So we have, we have a general appraisal or analysis of the situation, and then once we've had that analysis, we can make a decision on what we're going to do, and we narrow our focus and focus on that task. And another aspect of concentration is being able to recover from mistakes. We spoke earlier about the importance of just accepting mistakes and moving on, and that's really a concentration issue just as much as it is a way to prepare to have for high performance. So players have a choice. They can dwell on the mistake, or they can deal with it. And dealing with it is the growth mindset. Dealing with it is the mindset of being able to learn from it and move on. Dwelling on it is just hanging around and just having a lot of negative self-talk, not moving on. The game doesn't stop because you made a mistake.
Yeah.
It just doesn't stop it. I've never in any sport see umpires, referees, whatever, say, look, can we stop the game? This person's struggling. They've made a little bit of a mistake. Let's just let them get out. It doesn't happen. No. And that's kind of the same as got to get your head back in the game.
Yeah. That's right. And then again, in batting, let's say you foul off a ball or you do something and you get frustrated. The next ball is going to come. The ball and the bat don't know what happened last time. So
no, exactly right.
And just the brain of the person.
Yeah. And the brain's like a muscle. It the more you use it, the better it gets. But you've got to use it right. And if you use it, if you have too many connections, so you have too many routines or too many different routines or too mmany different self-talks or refocusing routines, there's too much wiring going on in the brain. You just need that standard. It's like it's like there's too many roads. If you think of your mind like a map or a road map, if you've just got the one highway, that's where it goes. If you've got all these side streets, that's when you become a little bit overwhelmed. That's when you become confused, and that's where the brain just kind of shuts off a little bit because there's too much going on. There's too much information for it. It likes repetition. It likes, the same patterns. But in saying that, it can't really tell the difference between positive and negative. So you need to make sure that your routines are positive ones, because it can just as easily go down the path of, when this situation happens, I panic. This is what happens. I start to talk negative to myself, or here we go again. The first 5 minutes of the game, I make a mistake. I dwell on it. I can't deal with it. I'm no good for the rest of the game. And I've seen that happen many a time because people can't recover. And all athletes, all players, you can watch any sport, watch your favorite player in your sport, watch the Olympics in softball. Every single player makes mistakes. But the difference between the elite players, if you like, and let's just say the masses, is not that they don't necessarily make mistakes, but it's their ability to recover from the mistakes. It's how quickly they can recover from it. And again, that goes back to the point, these all feed into each other. It goes back to the point of embrace mistakes, make mistakes at training, learn from them, deal with them, don't dwell on them, move on from them, be excited about the learning process from making a mistake so that you know how to recover. And that's where you want to be in terms of your concentration.
All right, let's move on to the fourth topic then. So this is about increasing confidence. And I put a picture of Ellen there deliberately because she's probably one of the most confident, at least on the outside pictures that I know. So can you talk about confidence, increasing confidence? I know you've got some thoughts on self-talk in particular. So that's something I'm keen to talk about.
So confidence has a number of aspects to it, but one of the big aspects is your body language. I'm sure the players have seen other players or other opponents, other teams where they've kind of been psyched out by their mere presence, that the way in which they present themselves in terms of their body language. They look the part, they walk as if they mean what, they are ready to play. They head up, shoulders, head up, shoulders back, walking tall, having this presence about themselves. And hopefully some of the players have felt that as well, but I'm sure they've also felt times where they felt like they want to hide. They have, haven't had the confidence. So body language is a really important component of being confident. And when you marry that with some really positive self-talk, and again, we don't want lots of messages to the brain. It just gets flooded when we give it too much information. So if we say it doesn't know the difference between positive and negative. So if we are constantly saying to ourselves, you're hopeless, you're no good, you're not, I don't think you're playing well, I don't know what you're doing here. If we talk really negative to ourselves, which is really destructive, and a lot of the things that players say to themselves, if I was to say what they say to themselves, they probably wouldn't think I'm a very nice person. We tend to be really hard on ourselves, and we've got to build ourselves up. We're the only person we can control. So we need to make sure that we're controlling ourselves the best possible way we can. And if we flood it with, even if we flood it with positive information, so we say, come on, you can do it, this is it, you've got it, just one more, you're playing well, I think you'll get in the team, I think you've made the team, I think we're going to win, all this type of information. The mind, even though they're all positive, the mind just goes, too much information,
right?
Too much happening. So my suggestion is that we keep the words, our self-talk, really simple. So a couple of words, positive. And I was working with a golfer once, and he did this, and he said, Fiona, it's not working. I said, what are your words? And he said, my words are don't panic. And I said, well, that's where you're going wrong. So we need to have them positive. We need to have them specific to you and your job in the team. And we need to make sure that they're kind of action type words. So, tall and strong, smooth and flow, smooth and rhythm, strong and rhythm, depending on what your, position is. Yeah. But it's really, really important that, again, surprise, surprise, you use these words at training. And I get players to think of these words like pieces of equipment. You wouldn't go to training dressed like you're going to the beach, because it's the wrong equipment. So don't go without your head. Lots of people just train with their body and they don't train with their mind. So these words are like the glue that kind of stick your head to your shoulders and sends the messages to your body. So I get people to maybe stick a pen in their shoes. So when they go and put them on, they go, what's this pen for? And I get them to write. So let's just say their words were tall and strong. So I'd get them to write somewhere on the hand, maybe on their bat, on their equipment, maybe on their glove, maybe with a sticker and, a smiley face, or if you're using your stickers are color-coded stickers. You might just write T and S or whatever your words may be. And then guess what? Now this relates back to, that's the channel you need to switch on, like your remote. When you need to refocus, when you need to perform in a high performance, when you need to have confidence, there's your green sticker with T and S on it, on your glove. Switch it on, refocus, tell yourself what you've got to do. And there's a whole lot of skills brought together in one routine process.
Okay, so there's a couple of things there. So one is keeping it really concise. So 2 or 3 words is what you're saying. They need 2 words and 2 or 3 words. They need to be active. They need to be some sort of, whether it's the words, you know, even if it's let's say a yellow dot or something you put on your bat or your glove, that needs to represent those words. So when you look at it, you think, oh, tall and strong in your case, or you might say relaxed and, you know, powerful.
Yeah,
or some,
even with relax, it may be something, again, more specific, maybe breathe, it may be drop, it might even be just drop, which means I'm used to when I get up there, I feel tense. So if I remind myself to drop
your shoulders, yep.
Smile, it's hard to be tense if you're smiling, so it could be the word smile. But the word, if you know the word, you know the words are right, that when you're sitting down as people are now, you can see and feel yourself performing your job that way. So if you're batting and you can see and feel being tall and strong, if you know, rhythm and flow, whatever the case may be, you can see and feel yourself doing it. And then what that program is doing, what you're installing is, this is what I want to look like and feel like, and this is how I do it.
Okay. And the other interesting thing is they're external things. So you've said a couple of times about triggers. They're all things outside of your body, outside of your mind, so that's what you use to trigger the behavior you want. It's not just about keeping in your head. It's about trying to find external triggers. I think that's one of the things that you said.
And so to me, the best skill set is to have some words so that are going on in your head, but then an external factor like a kinesthetic thing where you either hold your bat tighter, touch your glove, ground yourself, you know, hit your leg or whatever. And it doesn't have to be obvious, but it's just this connection to kind of connect your mind and body. So if you can have something in your head and something that you know, you can connect your mind and body with, that's really good. And you know, and that type of thing should be practiced all the time. It's a great way to improve the ability to handle pressure. It's a great way to improve your concentration and your confidence. And again, it's a routine and it happens regularly. And another reason why people don't have confidence is they have a bit of anxiety and they tend to feed some negativity a little bit. So this is where I kind of talk a little bit about, are you feeding facts or are you feeding fear? Because if we start to feed fear of all the what ifs, what if this happens, what if that happens, then we start to get a little bit anxious, and that's quite normal. Anxiety is quite normal. I would encourage, it's not a bad emotion to have. It's almost a necessary emotion for sport. But when you feel like it's blocking your ability to function or focus with the intensity that you'd like to, or have the confidence that you'd like to, then it's probably you know, something that you may have to work on. So when we tend to feed all the what ifs, we tend to have a lot of fear. If we feed the what is, what are the facts, and sometimes I get people to write down, what are your fears, what are your facts, and just make sure that when they have a clear mind, and they may have this you know, in their bag, they may look at it on the way to games, they may look at it on the way to training, and just focus on the facts. The facts are that I had a great session the other day. The facts are I'm fitter than I've ever been. The facts are that I'm hitting the ball really well. The facts are that, you know, the last few games I've been pitching really well. And so you create this memory bank. And so maybe even encouraging players to write a bit of a journal or just a couple of lines after each training session on how you felt the session went. Rate it with smiley face. 5 smiley faces is great. And if you get a few days with 1 smiley face, that's not disaster, because that's to me, that's kind of exciting because it means that you've had lots of opportunities to learn and grow and develop. Now, if there goes an extended period of time where things aren't going that well, then maybe that's when you talk to your coach or talk to someone as to why that may be happening. But be your own best friend. You know, don't get too hard on yourself. Don't be really kind to yourself. Talk to yourself how you would talk to your best friend, in comforting your best friend, in laughing with your best friend. Be your own best friend and make sure that what you're writing down is honest. It's really important to write some, you know, be honest in what you're saying. And, you know, then there's going to have moments in training sessions where you just go, remember that day. It may not have been your best training session, but it might have been a day where you showed tremendous resilience. It may have been a day where you really overcame some challenges. And just like we want to increase our bank balance in with our money, we put these in the memory bank, and we might have them on another little book where you just recall the moments, the feel good moments, the moments where you conquered something. And I would then keep that book in the bag you take to games, in the bag you take to training, and just reflect on them a little bit, especially if you're feeling a little bit anxious and you want to improve your confidence. Reflect on them a little bit and just remember the things that you've done really well under all conditions, to maybe just boost your confidence a little bit there.
All right, so we might leave that there. I just want to reinforce what you said there, though. I think it's really useful to have a journal to keep those positive things down there. And it needs to be a lot more positive. We haven't got time to go through a whole bunch of stuff, but it needs to be probably 3 or 4 positives to every one negative or something, because our brain tends to reinforce the negative things. So keeping a record of the real good things we did, and like you said, you know, keeping it in your bag so you can look at it and get ready before games. I'm going to move on now because we asked you to give us some resources, and I'm super keen for you to do that, and then hopefully get some questions from people. So we asked you to give us some resources. So you've given us 2 Instagram accounts. Do you just want to say something briefly about those Instagram accounts?
Oh, look, you know, with Instagram, it's, you know, these will give you some snippets of information which can be really useful. And, you know, it's great to have that feed coming in of just some positive reminders. And also with Instagram, just follow sports people that you admire. They may not be, and they obviously, you know, there'll be someone within your sport, but others may not. If you like Ash Barty, follow her. And I think we can learn from lots of people.
Okay, so there's the sports psych coach there and Premier Sports Psychology. And then you gave us 3 Facebook pages, Dan Abrahams, Alan Goldberg, and Believe Perform. Do you want to say something?
So Dan Abrahams is works a lot with golf and soccer. And I know that's not softball, but he's analytical mind of sports psychology is, I find it quite interesting. It's much more in depth. It's much more a little bit left field, but it's interesting and it's worth following. Goldberg is, you know, he has very good balance in what he's discussing. So that's an informative, page to follow. And Believe Perform is great. It just gives a lots of infographics, concise information that's just really positive reminders for you.
Yeah, Believe Perform is really good. They're like just 1-page things.
Yep.
It's a real good prompt.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned any books by Patrick Cohn, Alan Goldberg, or Dan Abrahams, Terry Orlick.
Yep.
And then,
you know, any book that you can reading. Anything on sports psychology is a bonus, and it's going to improve your knowledge base, and, you know, just may give you 1 or 2 tips.
Yeah, and I would recommend the Sports Psychology for Dummies. That's really, there's some, despite the title, it's really well written and got some really practical tools and techniques. And of course, on the bottom of the thing is your mobile number, 0414 778 006. All right, I've got one more question, then I'm going to hand it over to players' questions. So what do you know about sports psychology that you wish you'd known when you started? So you've been doing it 25 years. What do you wish you'd known when you started sports psychology?
Well, I know I knew the power of the mind and how important it was in reaching your potential.
Yeah.
And I just am blown away by how much that actually is true.
Right.
You know, and it's easy. It's a really easy way to reach your potential. It's a way that a lot of people, it's an area that a lot of people neglect.
Yeah.
And we're about creating this recipe for success. And I think everyone has their own recipe on what they need to succeed. And I just am convinced, having done it now for 25 years, that everyone's recipe needs a cupful of sports psychology in there.
Okay, that's good. That's a nice way. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Mark to look at the chat questions. I haven't looked at them, so I'll take the share off. So
yeah.
I can't hear Mark. The sound's off.
Questions at the moment.
Sorry.
Lots of links, but no questions at the moment. I'll have a look for you. A question here from Lauren. Should players prepare any differently for grand finals than other matches?
The short answer is no, because you have to ask yourself, what did you do in order to get to the grand final?
Yeah.
And you know, if you, that's often an area where people fall down. They think they have to do something completely different now that they're at the grand final, but you have to ask yourself, how did you get there? And whatever the process was to get there, repeat it. The fanfare of the grand final will be around, but you need to block out that focus. And if I can just give a really quick example, I was working with an Olympic swimmer, was a fair chance of medaling, went to the Olympics, just scraped through their heat, and phoned me up and said, Fiona, I'm in trouble. I said, no, you're not. Is the pool any different? And is the pool circular? And he said, no. I said, is it 50 meters? And he said, yes. And I said, you've just got to keep doing what you're doing. Forget about those Olympic rings and swim how you normally swim. And, you know, the rest is history. He medaled.
It's good. That's really good.
We have some more questions from Millie Cousins. Who was your most challenging athlete to work with?
Part of being a psychologist is a confidentiality of who I worked with, so I can't entirely answer that. But everyone's so different. Everyone's so different in how they present themselves. I mean, you know, I've had multiple gold medalists come to me 6 weeks out from a major championship saying, I don't believe in myself. So even though they've reached the top, they're just like us. You know, they have concerns with confidence, they have concern with concentration, they have a bit of anxiety, and nothing's a real challenge. The most important thing that I encourage everyone to do is be really honest with yourself. It's okay if you've got an area to work on, whether that's the mental side, the physical side, the technical side. The most important thing is that you have the courage to work on that area.
That's interesting. You said that a couple of times. Courage is really about, it isn't just about saying, oh, I'm not very good at this particular skill. It's not just looking and saying, oh, I'll never get any better. It's saying I'm willing to, you know, be brave and work on this and make mistakes and look silly while I'm learning this skill or this part of the skill.
Yeah, and that's how you improve. And don't ever be, whatever the area is, don't ever be afraid to be better, because that's really what it's all about. If I work on this area, I could be better. And too many times I've seen people train really, really hard physically, technically, and go and compete, and they train better than they compete. And then they go back and they train harder again, and they still get disappointed when they compete. And to me, they're not being honest, because possibly if that scenario keeps happening, it's an area where maybe it's a confidence issue. And if you don't address that pattern will still happen. You'll lose motivation, you'll lose the enjoyment of the game. And just see the mental side as an area like, I'm not fast, so don't ever be embarrassed to work on your speed. I don't have confidence. Don't ever be embarrassed to work on your confidence. It's just another area of your game that needs working on. There's no weakness in working on the mental side of sport.
Yeah.
We've got quite a few questions coming in. The next one is from Brooklyn. It's asking, what are some tips to manage nerves during games? So the tips to managing nerves during games is to firstly be aware of when you're nervous. And if this is during a game, it would be slightly different to if it was before the game, so pre-game. But during a game, the things that we spoke about would be making sure your self-talk is really positive, making sure that you have these triggers to refocus, because normally when we're nervous, we're dwelling on something or we're thinking ahead. And thinking ahead creates a bit of anxiety. So bringing yourself back to focusing on the present. So maybe having that technique where I spoke about saying stop, literally say stop to yourself. You can see a red stop sign, see a red light, whatever the case may be. Take a breath, look at your words, ground yourself, whatever the situation is. It could be, you touch your leg, you feel you see the grass, and that redirects your focus, and then you calm yourself with some of your key words. So it's literally stop, take a breath, focus on something external, so your glove, your foot, the bat, and then say your key words, and then focus on the task that's happening rather than the task that you are worried about maybe making a mistake in.
Okay.
Very good. We have another question from... let me see. A question from Lanine. How do you suggest athletes block out the crowd to focus on their role?
Well, Lanine, I would firstly say that at training, I would have a lot of crowd noise. I shared this story once with Mark. I was working with some tennis players, and they were to have a match play. So just pretend it was a match. And when I got there, one player was winning by a lot compared to the other player. So, it was a bit uneven. And I just got there and I just turned music up really, really loud. Like I just sat on the side. I just turned it up, and the player who was losing abused me, turned that music off, and the other player, when the match was finished, who eventually won it, came off and said, I didn't even hear the music. So it's about being in the zone. So I would have situations at training where you would create noise, and again I would use the trigger of can you block that noise out? And the way you might block that noise out is by, again, and I know I keep coming back to it because they're really important, using your keyword triggers and your physical triggers. So being able to note it, you can be aware of the noise, but then be able to focus on bring yourself back to the moment. So if it's the glove, it's squeezing the bat, seeing the grass. So bring yourself back to the here and now. Take a deep breath. Focus on your keywords, and if your keywords are right, they will be like a direction of what to focus on. So often with bat and ball sports, I encourage all the players to one of those two keywords to have the word ball, because the ball in bat and ball sports is what everybody's trying to do something with.
Yeah.
And it will narrow your focus, because wherever that ball is, that's where your mind should be. So by having that situation of creating noise, using your triggers to block it all out, bring yourself back to the moment, and then have the word of, ball and strong, or ball and smooth, or ball and rhythm, or ball and tall is a really good way of bringing yourself back, putting your head back in the game rather than in the crowd.
I know
Actually,
I know Mark's a real fan of practicing the mental game at training, and gets sometimes the other players to shout at the batters to distract them, saying mean things. So he's
We'd be
Yeah,
a
in-
great combination coming to training sessions, wouldn't we?
I think so.
I recently found. Oh, sorry. I've
in
recently
college
found.
softball,
Yeah, go
We're
on.
all going talking. Yep.
Go on,
Sorry,
Mark.
you go, Mark.
in college softball training, I was at Georgia last year, and they have loud music all through training. They have crowd noise. They play the players' walk-up songs that they put on when they're walking up to bat, and they play the jumbotron and put the person's face up when they're at batting practice.
Right.
So their images come up so that they get used to all those things that happen in the excitement of the game. And they practice like that all the time. I was there for about 5 days, all day, loud music, crowd noises, everything was part of their practice.
Yeah, I recently found some great German cheering, and so I sent it through to the girls who I pitch with, and I made them pitch with their AirPod ball and playing it loud at the very end of training. So good to know I was on track.
Yeah, and there's two things. It's becoming familiar with noise, but then it's making sure that you're learning how to block it out. And so that's where the skills that I spoke about. So combining those two things, having them present and then having an actual skill to blocking them out. When it comes to happening in the competitive situation, you don't really notice it, and it's not a pressure. It's not pressure for you because you're familiar with it.
We have some more questions. There's actually quite a lot. I'll check with Lanine in a moment about that. How long does it take to build a behavioural routine? And that's from Sabrina.
Well, you have to practice it regularly, and there's a bit of a school of thought that says 3 weeks, to really cement something. 21 days is to change some habits or cement a habit. But look, I've seen it happen over a 6-week period. I've seen it happen over 3 weeks, but I've also seen it happen. Someone comes into me on a Wednesday and they practice that skill for a couple of times in the training up until Sunday game, and it worked on Sunday.
And we have a further question also adding on to that one. How can you assist an athlete to break a negative routine? So it's about, if we talk about installing programs, what you want to do is you want to delete that program. So the best way to delete that program is to not use it. So you've got to catch yourself if you are doing that negative behavior. So that's maybe where coaches, parents can come in to say, hang on a sec, there you go again. Look, you're talking negative, or you make a mistake, you do that. So it's a matter of catching yourself and not feeding that program anymore. Let it, a weed will grow if you feed it, but if you don't feed it, it's not going to grow. So you need to make sure that firstly you become aware of how often you're doing it, and have people around you and yourself catch you when you are engaging in the negative behavior, and stop it as 3/4 of the way through, 1/4 of the way through. Stop it before it's about to happen. It's a bit like a big hole. You want to have this stop sign. You go, don't go any further or you'll fall in. So having this awareness to not feed that program anymore, and then you can't just go stop, you then have to replace it. So once you've caught yourself doing the negative behavior, stop yourself and then replace it with the appropriate behavior. So, if you find yourself, walking up and doing your normal negative routine, saying negative self-talk, stop and go back and replace it. So I kind of liken, zones in sports. So, if when you step into that zone, into the batter's box, when you step in there and you're not in a good frame of mind, step out, and then step in when you're in the right frame of mind.
Very good. Excellent. We just have a couple more questions. Our sport is built on failure. What do you suggest to the players to overcome failure, from Darren?
So does that mean the failure as in making errors?
Oh no, I think say for example in batting, a good batting average would be 3
Yeah, okay.
So 7
So
times
not
be successful. So,
yeah, similar to what we were saying before.
Yeah.
Embrace them. You know, it rather than there has to be an acceptance that that is your sport. And I think that's the first step, accepting that failures will happen, and don't seek perfectionism. Like, failures are bound to happen. Failures are a necessary step in your sport, a necessary process, a necessary ingredient in your sport, but deal with them rather than dwell on them. You know, don't let them hang around, embrace them, grow from them, learn from them. But I think the essence of that question, Darren, maybe is just to accept, for the players, just to accept that that is part of the game, part of the sport, and you know, be willing to allow them almost to happen and overcome them. You don't wish them to happen so intently, but just be aware that that's how it's played. You know, there are errors that are made, there are mistakes, there are failures that happen. So an acceptance of it is the first step, and then learning how to deal with them in terms of refocusing with the techniques that we've spoken about is probably the couple of step process that needs to happen there, and that needs to be encouraged at training as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things you said very early in tonight's conversation was about being the best player you can, so you can get better. So it's not about being the perfect player, because you're setting yourself up for failure then, because you're never going to be perfect. But it's saying, whatever I did today, whatever I did yesterday, I'm going to try and be better tomorrow, better than I was, rather than saying I'm going to be perfect.
That's right. And also then accept that tomorrow you may not be better, but you had the effort to try to be better.
Yeah.
Your mindset was to try to be better.
Yep.
Just a couple more questions from Alan. Do you have any advice about how to push through the pain barrier? Because it is a mental block sometimes.
Well, pain's a distraction. Pain's something that's kind of built in to distract us a little bit. And you know, I think again, if we zoom in on pain, if we embrace the pain, we're not focusing on the thing that we're meant to be focusing on. So if you're focusing so much on the pain that you're in, then you're not focusing on the job at hand. And you know, I often say to athletes at training, if you're thinking about the pain you're in, if you're thinking about how hungry you are, if you're thinking about how tired you are, you're not focused on the job at hand. So this is where the key words come into play, and players need to have a really, the first step of introducing the sports psychology to your game, or the mental game, is this awareness of, what am I thinking? What am I doing? You know, of that 10-minute drill or skill I was doing, when did I switch on? Like, what was I even switched on at all? And so having this awareness of when you are in the pain zone is the first step. And when you are, you need to distract yourself from that. And a way to do that, again, is focusing on the moment and being able to redirect your focus again to ball and strong, or ball and tall, or ball and smooth, or whatever the case may be. Because as soon as you now have told your brain another area to focus on. If you just focus on the pain, I can guarantee you it will get worse, and it will get more intense, and you'll become more debilitated, and it will bring you undone. But if you give your brain another option of something that's more productive to focus on, it's got and you do that all the time, on and off the pitch, when whether you're training or not training, in life, in other areas, if you can learn how to stop the distraction that's negative and refocus your attention or refocus onto the task at hand is really important. And just quickly, a way to do this also is it's not associated with pain, but it kind of brings in Lanine's question and Alan's question. Often I will get players to lay on their bed and listen to music they really, really like that and read a book. And are you reading the same line in a book or are you singing the song? Because the task is to read the book, not to sing the song. And then if you want to bring a little bit of pain in, listen to mum and dad's music and a book that you and a book that you do or don't like as well. So you mix it all up, things you do like, things you don't like, and see if you just are yelling, turn that music off because it's painful, or whether you can redirect your focus to the words on the page. And so there's lots of things outside of training and outside of the competitive arena that you can do to improve your focus as well.
That sounds to me like a good place to finish, Mark. Do you think?
Yeah, there is one very good question just to finish. From a coaching perspective, if a player is deflated after a performance that did not go to plan, how long do you leave them alone before you assist them to refocus?
Is this assuming that the day's over? Or they've got
I think this is assuming that the games are over for that day.
Yeah. Look, there's no easy answer because we're all so different. And there's a lot of people that say, wait till they're ready, wait 10 minutes, wait 20 minutes. I think what's important here is that they're given a time, that the player is given their amount of time to digest what's just happened. Because when you do speak with them, you want them to have some clarity. So if it's the next day, so be it. You know, give them the opportunity to go home, because when things haven't gone our way, we get quite emotional and we get overwhelmed and we have lots of emotions going on in our head. And it's a little bit like, if I can use a bit of an example, if, you know, when you've got the snow globes and you shake them up, there's when we're deflated or when we're confused, there's lots of snows going around, and we've got to give that time to settle. And how long does that take? I don't know. Sometimes it's the next training session. So if the game's on the Sunday and you don't see them to the Tuesday, that's okay as well. But what I would encourage them to do is once you've dealt with it, once you've cleared your head, and sometimes that's offloading it to mum or dad, sometimes that's just keeping quiet themselves, write down on a bit of paper the things you are happy with and the things you want and the things that you're disappointed with. And then we'll talk, you know, because otherwise, if we try to have a discussion when there's all that snow happening, it just gets lost. The messages get lost and there is no clarity. So there may not be a whole lot of learning. So unfortunately, I can't give you a definite time frame, but the most important thing is as a coach, you need to know your players, and every player has a different switchboard. Some players will get revved up if you say, this is the game you've got to play really well, such and such is watching. For another player, they'd crumble. Likewise, when they're deflated, when they're upset, know your player. You may just say some positive words to them when they leave, head up, you know, it'll all work out, it'll all be okay. And, you know, just kind of wrap it up with that. Other players, you might think they just need to talk right now, but that's a conversation that as a coach and a player, I would have with my players pre-season. You know, I would try to get them to answer the questions. When do you like to talk about things? Straight away, a little bit after, or even if once they've played, just say, you know, not that happy with how it went, not really. Well, did you want to talk about it now, or you want to leave it a few days? Give them the option and they'll know.
Good. Thank you. Those are great questions from everyone. Back to you, Gary.
All right, so we just want to say thank you very much, Fiona. That was fantastic. I mean, it's a big audience, lots of questions. I'm sure people have taken away lots and lots of ideas, and probably a bit of interest in terms of finding out a little bit more as well. So that's really good. Do you want to take a photo, Lineen, just so we capture the number of people?
Mute, yes. I'll mute myself there. Okay, are we ready for your favorite smile? Okay, I'll tell you on 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Go.
There we go. Beautiful.
Oh, no worries.
That was really good. And I think that for me, like, you know, from being a mum and having been a player and now a coach, I really quite like the aspect of you looking at the fact that going to training is a really important thing, to not just go through the motions, but to actually put in place and put in practice things that you want to achieve in the game, but also practicing those mental skills. It was great to see that it was almost this whole separate training program compared to, you know, the physical component. So, and it was really good because I'm sure that you guys can learn to read a book at home or be a little bit more focused in class when your friends are trying to distract you. And that's, you could be focusing in school and saying it's a sports psychology thing, I've got to listen to my teacher. So it was good to bring a bit of homeschooling and softball all in one. So
nice try, Lineen. Nice try.
Yeah, I'm trying my best. I've got 2 kids at home, so I'm trying my best. But beautiful. It was wonderful. Thanks again, Fiona.
Thank
I
you
really
very much,
appreciate
Fiona. Really.
That's
Yeah,
all right, no
Sunday
problem. And
night.
just to say that, you know, the mental side of sport, you don't have to do more training. You just incorporate it in the training you're already doing.
Yeah.
Cool.
It was great.
Oh, that's
Beautiful.
great.
And it's on Facebook. So thanks again. And thanks everyone for a Sunday night. Certainly beats, I don't even know what's on live TV, but I'm sure it beats everything that was on live TV tonight. So
Thanks,
beautiful.
Fiona.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Fiona.
Thanks very much.
Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. That was fantastic.
Yes, it was really good. Really good.
No problem. Thanks for the opportunity. I hope it you know, was at the right level for the people, the audience.
Yeah,
That was great.
Very good. Very good.
And,
And
oh,
we had a
sorry,
mix
I
of
was-
coaches and players. So
Yeah.
And I was going to share your practice up on our Facebook page along with the photo. Is that okay for you to do that? Then?
That's fine. No problem at all. Thank
Yep.
you.
Beautiful. I'll pop that up there as well. So appreciate that. Thank you very much.
No worries.
That's okay. And yeah, just any feedback that would be great. And if you know, if I can help in any other way, just let me know.
No, it was great. Thank
No
you.
worries. All right. Thanks, Fiona.
Enjoy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
talk to you soon. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Gary and Lineen again.
Thanks, Mark.